Hi, it's Jen here, and I'm going to be reading 3 short stories from the subreddit Let's Not Meet. This one's submitted by Leonardo Divisi. Hey everyone, recently found the subreddit and it really resonated with me, not because I've experienced too many creepy moments in my life, and here's to hoping I never have to post another story here, but it's awesome to see how courageous and inspiring some of these posters are. Anyways, this happened about a year ago, and I almost forgot about the story if it weren't for the subreddit. It was a summer night, and I was heading home after a little get-together at my friend's house. I usually park my car in my backyard, which is only accessible through an alley, which is completely pitch black at night. So eventually, once I had to go home, I have to drive through the dark alleyway. As I was turning into the alley entrance, a dark-haired woman nearly walks in front of my car, and more freaked out that I almost ran over her. I wait for her to cross. I can't recall correctly if she did cross or if she just let me go. A little spooked by this because I'm a wuss. I drive into my backyard and hurry to manually close the gate. As I am closing the gate, I peer up to notice the exact same woman I had just encountered a few minutes ago, staring right at me. She's probably a few meters away from me, near the backyard right across from mine. I am a relatively tall person, so my head was above the gate's height, meaning there was no way I could have avoided looking at her, unless I awkwardly crouched, but I felt that would attract too much attention. She continued to silently stand there as I closed the gate, and as I walked as casually, but with a spring in my step, as I could from the gate back into my house. I never saw her again, and hopefully she's never seen me. So, creepy alley lady, let's not meet again. This next story was submitted by String P. I'm a strong believer in listening to my gut. I always have and always will, since it's got me out of a few situations. One being my freshman year of high school. School had ended for the day, and since I was staying at my dad's house that week, I decided I would walk home. His house wasn't far from my school. Everything was fine until I turned down the street where there was a shortcut. It led straight into my neighborhood. As I was walking to the shortcut, a man drove by staring at me. My stomach dropped and turned. I took this as a note to walk a little bit faster. By the time I got into my neighborhood, the man was circling around in the cul-de-sac, waiting for me. He had a smirk slowly creeping onto his face as I walked by his car. I tried to ignore him the best I could, and I just kept walking. He would drive past me and yell vulgar things at me. He kept turning around and driving past me again and again. As I turned down my street, he followed close behind. I saw him drive down my street and turn into someone's driveway to turn back around. I quickly got into my house and locked the door behind me. I then turned around to look in the peephole so I could see if he left. He didn't. The man pulled up into my driveway and got out of the car. Luckily, my neighbor, who is a family friend, was out in his garage. He came over yelling at the man, then stayed with me until my dad got home. A week later, my dad told me he saw the man parked at the end of the street waiting for me. He went and threatened the man, and we haven't seen him since. I'm still freaked out a bit every time I go to visit him. It's safe to say I won't be walking home alone ever again. This last story was submitted by Night Goddess 8443. To give a little context for the story, I was right around 15 and living at my dad's house when this happened. We lived in a quiet neighborhood up in the hills. On the night of this occurrence, it was around midnight. I had just gotten home from a babysitting job for a neighbor that was about 10 minutes away walking. On my way home, I hadn't heard anyone except a couple owls. I walked into the house, locked the door, and went downstairs to see if my sister was awake. As I got to the bottom of the staircase, the doorbell rang. I thought maybe I left something in the house, as I was at, so I quickly ran back upstairs. When I answered the door, I was greeted by a man covered in blood. He honestly looked like a zombie, in my 15-year-old perspective. His jaw was hanging limp, and he was missing at least 7 teeth. His head looked concaved in several spots, and one of his eyes was missing. He may have been beaten with a baseball bat. I stepped back in shock as he sputtered the word, "help," and collapsed on our porch. I ran into my dad's room shaking and told him what had happened. He shot up, called 911, and went to help. By this point, my little brother, who's 6 years old, had woken up and was trying to find out what was going on. I rushed to get them back into the room and get Dad the supplies he needed until the ambulance arrived. Unfortunately, the man was too injured to tell anyone what happened, but he kept pointing to the top of the next hill. The ambulance took him to the hospital. The man died a John Doe in the hospital 2 days later. To the man who showed up on my porch, rest in peace. To the sick asshole who did that to him, let's not meet.